I was the other man twice. Now I'm sharing my story so you won't make the same mistakes. Or edit, 36M here. Throwaway because reasons. Over the course of the last few months, I've been going down the Reddit YouTube rabbit holes surrounding stories of cheating spouses, and that has inspired me to bring my stories to the table. I'm not looking for any pity, sympathy or gain. I just hope even one person reads this and decides not to do something stupid and irreversible. Allow me to start by saying I have never cheated on any of my partners, but I'm not exactly innocent. I was, twice, the other man twice as far as I know anyway. I've been in 4 long-term relationships ranging from 5 months all the way to 10 years, and cheating was prevalent in 3 of them. Girl 1. I was definitely a late bloomer, both physically and emotionally. I struggled with self-esteem issues and had absolutely zero confidence in myself. I just figured I would be one of those guys that never got a girlfriend. I never had the incel mindset that I was owed a girlfriend by simply being nice. It just took a long time before I had the confidence and charm to just talk to girls. So when I was 19 and I met her, let's call her Ivy, I didn't think for a second anything romantic would ever happen. We both worked in a food court about 10 feet away from each other, and she would occasionally order food from us, so we began causally chatting. That chatting turned into a rather strong friendship over the course of about a year. And somewhere along the line, it became physical. Now from day one, I was aware that Ivy had a long-distance boyfriend back in her home country. Which was another reason why I figured nothing would ever happen. But the closer we got, the more she confided in me that her boyfriend was controlling, angry, toxic and overly jealous for good reason I guess, and overall just a monster. He hated that she had friends, demanded to know where she was at all times. If they were on the phone and he heard literally any sound, even her cat, he would fly off the handle. She didn't seem happy with him at all. So when she and I began fooling around, I didn't see myself as the bad guy. I was the savior. I was going to save her from a life of misery with this horrible man. We started spending every day together. I introduced her to my parents. We started telling each other I love you all the time. It was like a real honest-to-God relationship. My first one. I was elated. For the entire time we had known each other, she had been saving up for a trip back home to see her family and boyfriend. I was aware of this. But over the course of us falling in love, the purpose of the trip home shifted to I need to break up with him in person. I was obviously worried, but tried my best to be understanding. I couldn't tell her not to go and see her family, as they were having a crisis with their family business and needed help. And as long as she broke up with him, everything would be fine. She would come back and we could finally start our lives together. She even convinced me to get a matching tattoo with her before she left. A stupid little heart with a banner that says hope. I know. I do joke around about having it changed to nope so the day comes where she leaves to go home. I'm obviously nervous. But surely she'll come back, right? He's a monster. I'm so much better than him. There's no way she'll choose him. Despite having zero self-confidence, I still felt like I was much better looking than him and I treated her way. What did I have to be worried about? So she messages me right away that she got there safely and she would arrange a time to talk soon. I remember having to buy phone cards and punch in dozens of numbers in order to talk to her. We chatted every other day for the first week, then just through Messenger, then even those became less frequent. For weeks I would shoot straight out of bed to check if she had messaged me, but over time the messages stopped coming. One day managed to catch her while she was online and I flat out asked her what was going on. She danced around the subject at first, but then told me she wasn't coming back. I was floored. In total shock. I begged and pleaded but she had made up her mind. Not only was she staying there but they were getting married. We lasted roughly 6 months together before she left. This was my first big heartbreak, and it left a lasting impact on me. Just when I had started to gain some self-confidence, it was shattered. And in place I was left with overwhelming grief and a fear of abandonment. They're still together as far as I know, they have 4 or 5 kids and even moved here to this city, but I've never run into them and I hope I never do. She contacted me once, years later, to apologize and wish me well. I don't recall what, if anything, I said back. I genuinely hope her and her husband are happy, they deserve each other. Girl 2. So roughly a year after the Ivy fallout, I was finally in a good place again. I had picked myself up, dusted myself off and was ready to try dating again. After a few casual hookups, losing some weight and getting a bunch more tattoos, my confidence was at an all-time high and I was finally getting pretty good at chatting girls up. While working at the same job I had met Ivy in, I ended up helping these 2 very cute girls, one of which was extremely flirty and clearly into me. Let's call her Nikki. I had planned on asking for her number, but her friend beat me to the punch and came up to give it to me. Right away we started texting and made plans to go on a date. That date lasted 4 days. Now the next part should have most of you slapping your foreheads because of how utterly stupid I was. At the end of the 4-day date, she confesses that she has a boyfriend. We hadn't had intercourse during those 4 days, but we did fool around a lot and it definitely came as a shock when she told me. I should have run for the hills then and there. I couldn't go through that again, but I stuck around because she said she was going to end it with him that very day. And she did. At the time, this almost felt like a redemption story. Like I had lost the last one, but finally won in the end. I was totally naive, blind to the red flags, and still dealing with the Ivy trauma deep down. We started dating, sleeping together, met each other's families. We seemed to have a really good thing going, but I definitely started noticing some issues springing up. She didn't have a job, so I had to pay for literally everything, and her extreme mood swings would come out of nowhere. She would be so sweet one minute and flip out the next. She cried constantly. Eventually she tells me that she's bipolar and on meds for it. To me, this wasn't a deal breaker. I was happy she felt comfortable enough with me to be honest, and I was glad she was on meds for it. Nikki also was open about her bi-intimacy, and occasionally lamented only being able to be with one man and no women. We had talks about possibly doing an open relationship so she could explore that side of herself, and after months and months of discussions, we decided to try it. At first it was tough. We were both pretty immature and didn't react favorably when the other would take the opportunity to sleep with someone. We communicated well and talked it out every time. Part of our agreement was she only sleep with girls, and she tell me when she does. And the same went for me, just be honest. Pretty reasonable stipulations, I would argue. One day we were having a conversation where she slipped up and mentioned she had hooked up with one of her male friends. When I asked when, she tried to backtrack and say it was before we met. But she had met him well after she met me, so I had caught her in a lie. Apparently she had gone to a party and hooked up with him weeks prior but forgot to tell me, and also conveniently forgotten the girls only rule. I was pissed, angrier than I ever had been at that point in my life. I punched a wall and stormed out of the room. I'm not proud of that part. I usually keep a pretty cool head under pressure. It only took a few minutes for me to calm down and decide to talk it out with her. At this point we had been together for a couple years and I didn't want to throw it all away, but I never truly forgot about it. We did last for a few more years together, 4 total. It wasn't the cheating that ended us, it ultimately ended up being her mental illness and financial irresponsibility. She managed to hold down a few jobs but would routinely spend all her money on frivolous things, even going as far as spending her rent money and leaving me to cover it. Since I made more, I was already paying 2/3 of it, but the final straw was when she blew her entire paycheck on something stupid, and then tried to apologize by spending her next paycheck on an expensive gold ring for me. Like, it was a sweet gesture. But goddamn, I couldn't keep living like this. So I ended it. She also contacted me years later, but instead of apologizing she just said she missed the intercourse. She's also married now with I have no idea how many kids. I hope she's well. Girl 3, this one is by far the hardest one to reconcile with. My next relationship started when I was 25. Let's call her Celeste. We worked at the same mall, across the hall from one another. When we met, she had a boyfriend. Stop me if you've heard this one before. But this time was different. I didn't pursue her until I was told by some mutual friends that they had split up. Her ex was absolutely batshit insane, but that's a story for another day. She and I hit it off right away. She would come see my band, and I would go see her burlesque shows. We became inseparable. We had so much in common and spent almost all our free time together. There were none of the same red flags I had seen in previous relationships, and we ended up moving in together within just a few months. Within the first year I told myself, this is the girl I'm going to marry. She was so much fun, bubbly, sweet, driven, gorgeous. I had told her about my previous experience with an open relationship and how I was comfortable with that dynamic. Yes, even after what had happened with Nikki, I thought surely it won't backfire again. So just like with the previous one, we spent months discussing how it would work, the ground rules, what challenges we could face. Now I know what you're thinking. And yes, I am a very slow learner. In my mind, I was trying to craft a relationship that was cheat-proof. We could do basically whatever we wanted as long as we were safe and be honest. Yes, I'm naive. Yes, I look back and think how stupid I was. I genuinely try to see the best in people and I trust too easy. The day I proposed was the most nervous and excited I had ever been. I told her I was taking her for an adventure, so we went to grab Korean barbecue, which she had been bugging me to try. I had the ring in my pocket the whole time and couldn't go 10 seconds without touching it to make sure it was still there. I brought her to the spot where we had our first date, This beautiful outdoor garden along the sea wall with romantic lights. It was perfect. Did the whole one knee thing, but she didn't notice right away, and by the time she turned around she was 10 feet ahead of me. It was a great moment. She obviously said yes. She cried. I cried. We hugged. That was it. We were engaged and life was good. We had still been doing the casual open thing and even explored some group activities. I felt like we communicated really well and had such a wonderful time together that there was no way it could all fall apart. Then came James. James was a friend of hers from way back. I met him once and immediately got the ick from him. Just bad vibes. I'm not jealous or possessive and I had zero issue with her having mail. This guy just rubbed me the wrong way. One day Celeste mentions that she's decided on doing a Europe James. Immediately my alarms start going off and I tell her I don't think it's a good idea. I was upfront about my dislike for him, but I also said I wouldn't forbid her from going. It's her life. Her money. Her call. I know you'll all assume she cheated with James, but that didn't end up happening. He ducked up somehow in their friend group and with all the drama, he backed out of the trip. I was extremely relieved, but then she tells me she's decided to go by herself anyways. I wasn't stoked, given the fact that my first girlfriend had gone to Europe and hadn't come back. But I tried to be supportive. I wanted her to have fun, experience new things. I would have gone with her had I been able to afford it and get the time off work. But I couldn't. This was a tough time. My now fiancée was traveling all over Europe and I was here having daily panic attacks. I let her know just how bad it was and she did her best to ease my concerns. But with the time zone difference, communication wasn't easy. The trip lasted for a month. Picking her up from the airport was the most relieved I had ever been. She was home. Things were good again. She even makes a point to say she hadn't hooked up with anyone while she was gone. But after being home for only 4 short days, she tells me that she's going to Seattle for a few days. This seemed totally spontaneous and hurt like hell, but what could I do? Once again, she goes and returns. This is where shit hits the fan. While she had been traveling, myself and our roommates had begun the process of moving. We were being rent-evicted and found a much nicer place to live. On moving day, she was at the new place doing some painting, I was at the old house finishing up last-minute packing. While taking a quick breather, I noticed an Instagram notification. Someone wanted to send me a message. I decided to ignore it, but then a few minutes later Celeste calls me in a panic. She tells me not to read any messages from anyone and she's on her way back right away. I flat out ask her what's going on. She struggles to get the words out. I ducked up. And confesses that she had hooked up with someone in Europe. Luckily for her I had just smoked a joint, so I was feeling particularly chill in that moment. So I tell her just get home safe so we can talk, no matter what, we'll be okay when she gets back. I sit her down and tell her this is her chance to get everything out in the open. I ask how many times. She says 4 times. I ask if it was the friend she had met and told me about, Raphael. She says yes. I told her we're open. All you had to do was be honest with me. She hid it because she knew I was having such a tough time and didn't want to make it worse. Then she comes clean that the trip to Seattle was also only to meet up with him. I asked if they used protection. She adamantly said yes. She offered to give me back the engagement ring. But I told her to hang on to it for now. I wasn't ready to give up on us. In my recent dive down the Reddit YouTube rabbit hole I've learned the term trickle truth. And that's what I was fed for the following months. She would swear up and down that it didn't happen more than those 4 times, but she did eventually confess that she doesn't fully remember if they used protection in Seattle because she got blackout drunk. Which, like, obviously means they didn't. More and more little things would come to light, like she had told him she had strong feelings for him, even though they had only known each other for weeks. Every one of these felt like a dagger. But I was so blinded by love that I just wanted to push past this. Obviously one of the conditions of staying together was couples therapy. Which was good. I was so very wounded but still holding strong that we could work past this. People duck up. I wanted to believe that we could look back on this as a bump in the road. Raphael had also somehow contacted her parents to tell them about what she had done. Celeste had an extremely strained relationship with her parents growing up and, with my help, had begun rebuilding her relationship with them. This would have undone all that work. So I lied to them and told them I had known about Raphael the whole time. They weren't stoked about the whole open relationship thing, but it was better than them knowing she had an affair. I eventually looked at the message Raphael had tried to send me and even struck up a conversation with him. His version of events was so much worse than hers. But some of it seemed sort of suspect. So I'd imagine the truth is somewhere in the middle of what they both told me. Even after everything she had done, I still loved her. For the next 1.5 years we did a lot of work to mend the broken trust and we still ended up getting married. The wedding was beautiful, The best day of my life. At that point I looked at it as a clean slate. We would still do therapy occasionally, and on our honeymoon, I officially forgave her for the affair. Less than 12 months later she left me. I had stuck by her through an affair. Through countless mental and physical illnesses. Entire nights in the hospital holding her hand while she suffered through what was eventually diagnosed as CHS. An allergy to weed. I stuck by her and helped her recover from her eating disorder. I was instrumental in repairing the relationship with her parents. I made sure she came home to a tidy house and clean kitchen every day because her mental health was so strongly tied to a clean house. I stuck by her through her anger issues and pathological lying, mostly about small things but lies nonetheless. I was affectionate, attentive, communicative. Every single day I tried to think of something to make her day better. And she still left me. Imagine that. Despite everything in the previous paragraphs, I felt like we really did have an amazing relationship. We were a team and all those issues seemed like a drop in the bucket of what should have been a lifelong marriage. 10 years together and she up and leaves after an identity crisis. Not just that, but the months following her leaving were full of mind ducks and mental torture. She tried to convince me she left because she didn't feel the same level of love and effort she was contributing. I wasn't planning dates. And then when I went full-on save marriage mode and planned about 1,000 adventures, it was apparently too little too late. If she didn't notice my love and effort, it's because she had her head buried in the sand. Despite telling me she wasn't attracted to me anymore, she did initiate intercourse during and even months after the split, and even mentioned going back to couples therapy. All of that ducked with my head so much. I'm assuming sure she only did those things because I had started casually seeing someone younger and insanely gorgeous and she was. I don't really know. In the year since we split I've done a lot of soul searching and I've realized just how badly she ducked me up. The trauma of being cheated on came back in full force once it became apparent she wasn't going to stay with me, and boy does it hurt. That shit sticks with you. Being cheated on will absolutely crush your self-esteem, your confidence in yourself, your trust in others. I had panic attacks for months afterwards. I still suffer from nightmares about it. I contemplated a lot about whether or not I would revenge cheat, but ultimately decided against it. It wouldn't make me feel any better. I had dreams where I would cheat and I would always wake up so relieved that it wasn't real. There are no winners in cheating. It's not worth it. It never is. If even one person reads this and decides not to cheat, that's a win for me. If you feel like you can't be complete with just one partner for the rest of your life, end the relationship. Don't cheat on them. And if cheating is a goal or kink for you, please seek therapy to figure out why. P.S. Yes, I'm a slow learner. Yes, I trust too easy. Call me a doormat, I sincerely don't care. I try to see people for their best qualities and my experiences haven't stopped me from starting a new relationship with someone truly lovely. We're not doing the open thing though. I've learned my lesson there. Appreciate your time.